They say the corporate world is built on ambition, power, and trust. But what happens when trust is shattered? When ambition is twisted into cruelty, and power is used not to lead, but to crush those below you? This is the story of how a toxic manager denied me a promotion, humiliated me in front of the entire office, and how I turned the tables on him in a way he never saw coming. My name is Clara Jameson, and this is my office revenge story. I work, or should I say I used to work, at a mid-sized financial consultancy firm in downtown Chicago. Imagine glass walls, sterile cubicles, the endless hum of copy machines, and the smell of burnt coffee drifting from the break room. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my world. I joined the company fresh out of grad school, wide-eyed, eager, full of hope, and for the first few years I thrived. I worked long hours, often being the last person to leave, chasing deadlines while my colleagues clocked out at 5. My work ethic was noticed by everyone, it seemed, except the one person whose approval mattered most, my manager, Richard Hale. Richard. Oh, where do I even begin? He was the kind of man who walked into a room and immediately poisoned the air. His suits were sharp, but his words were sharper. He had this permanent smirk, as if life itself was an inside joke only he understood. And if you dared to question him, he cut you down with sarcasm so brutal it left scars. At first, I tried to believe his behavior was just tough love. Maybe he saw potential in me, and this was his way of pushing me. But the more I worked with him, the more I realized. Richard didn't want to mentor anyone. He wanted control. He thrived on manipulation, on keeping people small so he could feel big. And unfortunately, I was his favorite target. Let me paint you a picture of a typical day. I'd arrive at 7:45 a.m., coffee in hand, ready to face whatever mountain of work awaited me. Richard would already be there, not because he was hardworking, God no, but because he loved being the first face we saw. He'd lean back in his chair, feet on his desk, flipping through his phone, pretending to be busy. "Morning, Clara," he'd say without looking up. "Try not to screw anything up today. Clients are hard enough to deal with without you making me look bad." That was his good morning. Other times he'd summon me with that dreaded email subject line, "Need you now." It didn't matter if I was in the middle of something urgent. Dropping everything for him was non-negotiable. He'd hand me a pile of tasks, most of them things he should have been doing, and then criticize every detail once I completed them. If I worked late, "You're too slow." If I finished early, "You probably missed something." If I tried to defend myself, "Watch your tone, Clara. No wonder you're not management material." It was a game I couldn't win. Despite it all, I kept pushing. My colleagues noticed. They'd whisper things like, "Clara's basically running this department," or "If anyone deserves the next promotion, it's her." Even the clients sent glowing feedback. And the truth is, I was running things. Richard delegated so much to me that I practically carried his workload and mine combined. I prepared his presentations, handled the numbers, smoothed over his mistakes when he snapped at clients. People assumed I was his right-hand woman, but really I was his shield. He hid behind me and I absorbed all the blows. So when rumors began to circulate about an upcoming promotion, assistant director of operations, I allowed myself, for the first time in years, to dream. This was my chance. My hard work would finally pay off. The idea of stepping out from Richard's shadow, of finally being recognized, it lit a fire inside me. But Richard, he had other plans. It started subtly. He began undermining me more openly in meetings. If I suggested an idea, he'd interrupt with, "Let's not waste time with that." If I presented data, he'd question its accuracy in front of the team, even though he knew it was flawless. Then came the rumors. Whispers that Clara was difficult, that I lacked leadership qualities. First, I brushed it off. Office gossip was nothing new. But when I discovered those whispers traced back to Richard himself, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just being toxic. He was sabotaging me. And here's the part people don't talk about in revenge stories: the toll it takes on your personal life before the revenge begins. I'd come home exhausted, emotionally drained, collapsing on the couch still wearing my work clothes. My best friend Mia would call and ask why I hadn't shown up for trivia night again. My mom would worry over the phone, telling me I sounded hollow. I stopped painting, something I used to love. I stopped going to the gym. Even cooking felt like too much effort. I survived on takeout and black coffee. My world shrank until it was just me and the suffocating weight of Richard's presence. But I kept telling myself, it will all be worth it once I get that promotion. Oh, how naive I was. It happened on a Wednesday morning, one of those crisp Chicago days when the city seemed almost forgiving. The kind of morning where sunlight bounced off glass towers, and for a brief moment I thought, maybe today will be different. The leadership team had scheduled a department-wide meeting. Whispers had been circling for weeks. The promotion announcement was coming. I wore my best navy blue blazer, the one that made me feel like I actually belonged at the table, not just in the background. I rehearsed my smile in the mirror, the one that said, I'm ready. As the team gathered, Richard strutted in like a king about to address his court. He tapped the conference table with his knuckles, smoke plastered across his face. All right, everyone, he began. His voice was in self-importance. Big news today. Our department is expanding. And as you all know, we're filling the role of Assistant Director of Operations. My heart raced. My palms grew clammy under the table. This was it. Years of sacrifice, endless late nights, quick weekends. It all came down to this moment. Richard scanned the room, letting the tension build. He looked directly at me. For a second, I thought he might actually acknowledge my work. Then he cleared his throat. I'm proud to announce, he said slowly, savoring every word, that the role will go to David Miller. The room erupted in polite applause. My stomach plummeted. David Miller? The new guy? The one who joined barely a year ago and had spent most of that time fumbling through spreadsheets and asking me how to do his job? I blinked, convinced I'd misheard. But no, the grin on Richard's face told me everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated. I sat frozen, clapping weakly as my colleagues offered congratulations. David, red-faced and awkward, stood to shake Richard's hand. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. But before I could find the words, Richard's voice cut through the noise. Oh, and Clara, he said casually, as if I were an afterthought. You'll be reporting to David starting Monday. I'm sure you'll have no trouble showing him the ropes. After all, you're so good at the assistant role. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough. A few chuckles, some nervous smiles, and just like that, the humiliation was complete. I felt my face burn, my throat tighten. I excused myself, muttering something about a client call, and rushed to the restroom. Locking myself in a stall, I pressed my forehead against the cool metal wall, trying not to cry. He didn't just deny me the promotion. He made me train the guy he gave it to. That's when the anger began to simmer. The office is a strange ecosystem. News travels fast and everyone pretends not to know what they clearly know. By lunchtime, the whispers started. Can you believe it? Clara deserved that promotion. Richard's playing favorites again. Poor Clara. She basically trained David already. Some offered me sympathetic smiles. Others avoided me entirely, as if my failure were contagious. But the worst part, David himself. He approached me in the break room, holding his coffee cup like it was a trophy. Hey Clara, he said, sheepish but smug. Guess I'll be your boss soon. No hard feelings, right? I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Of course, David. Congratulations. But inside a storm was brewing. The following weeks were unbearable. Richard doubled down on his cruelty, now emboldened by his little victory. He'd make comments in meetings like, Clara, why don't you let your new boss handle that? Or, careful Clara, don't confuse David. He's got a lot to learn, and we wouldn't want you making him look bad. Every word was a dagger, every smirk a reminder that he had stripped me of dignity. But the worst came one Friday afternoon. I was staying late, as usual, finishing a report that Richard had dumped on my desk last minute. As I worked, I overheard Richard and David in the hallway. Richard's voice was low, conspiratorial. Don't worry about Clara. She's useful, but she'll never be leadership material. Too emotional. Keep her busy though, she's great at doing the grunt work. David chuckled nervously. Got it, Richard. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The exhaustion, the humiliation, the years of silent suffering. It all crystallized into one clear thought. He will not get away with this. Revenge doesn't start with a grand plan. It begins as a whisper, a shadow of an idea that grows with every insult, every slight. I began to watch Richard more closely. his patterns, his weaknesses. He was careless with his lies, sloppy with his cover-ups. He thought no one noticed when he fudged numbers on reports, when he exaggerated client feedback, when he took credit for work he didn't do. But I noticed. I had noticed for years. And now, for the first time, I started documenting. Every email, every meeting note, every inconsistency. I built a quiet archive of his corruption, a digital fortress of evidence. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it yet. But I knew this much. Richard Hale had declared war on me. And I was going to end it on my terms. Revenge doesn't arrive in one grand strike. It's built brick by brick, moment by moment. For weeks I lived a double life. By day, I was the obedient subordinate, nodding along to Richard's orders, quietly training David, swallowing every insult. By night, I was the architect of his downfall. I stayed late, combing through emails, cross-referencing documents, piecing together a puzzle only I could see. I noticed patterns like how Richard billed clients for hours he never worked, or how he inflated numbers to make underperforming projects look profitable. He even redirected bonuses meant for team members into his own account. Every discovery added fuel to the fire. My private folder, labeled innocuously as Meeting Notes 2023, was growing fat with evidence. Screenshots, financial discrepancies, recordings of his verbal abuse. Proof that Richard wasn't just a bad boss. He was a fraud. But revenge, like any operation, requires allies. And that's where Mia came in. Mia wasn't just my best friend, she was a lawyer. The kind of sharp, relentless woman Richard would have underestimated in a heartbeat. Over wine one Friday night, I finally spilled everything. "Mia," I whispered, sliding my laptop toward her. "Tell me I'm not crazy." She scrolled through the files, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief to cold fury. "Clara," she said finally, her voice low and firm, "this isn't just toxic management. This is criminal." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Together, we crafted a strategy. Step 1. Compile everything in a clear, airtight dossier. Step 2. Bypass Richard's influence and take it straight to the top, the board of directors. Step 3. Expose him in a way that left no room for escape. But I wanted more than his firing. I wanted public humiliation, the kind he had thrived on for years. To set the trap, I needed Richard to overplay his hand. And I knew exactly how to provoke him. At the next department meeting, when he presented a report full of doctored numbers, I raised my hand. My voice was calm, polite. "Richard, I think there might be a discrepancy here. The client feedback for Project Orion doesn't match what's in your report." The room fell silent. Richard's eyes narrowed, his smirk faltering. "Are you questioning me, Clara?" he snapped. "I'm just asking for clarification," I replied sweetly, my heart pounding. He launched into a tirade, belittling me in front of everyone. "This is exactly why you'll never be leadership material. You focus on the wrong details, you undermine authority, you don't know your place." His words hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. David stared at his notes, avoiding eye contact. I said nothing more, letting his fury burn unchecked. Because the angrier he got, the more careless he became. And that was exactly what I needed. The final straw came 2 weeks later. Richard, in his arrogance, sent me an email by mistake. An email meant for David. In it, he mocked me cruelly. "Clara's pathetic. Keep her busy, but don't trust her with anything important. I've already planted the seed with HR that she's unstable. When the time comes, we'll push her out quietly." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Then slowly I smiled. He had just handed me the smoking gun. The exposure. With Mia's help, I organized everything into a neat, devastating package. A 67-page dossier of fraud, abuse, and misconduct. I scheduled a confidential meeting with the board, bypassing Richard completely. The day of the meeting, I walked into the glass-walled conference room wearing that same navy blue blazer, the one I'd worn when he humiliated me. Only this time my smile was real. I laid out the evidence piece by piece. The forged numbers. The stolen bonuses. The abusive emails. The recording of him admitting he used me as his grunt worker. By the time I finished, the board members sat in stunned silence. Finally, the chairman spoke. "Ms. Jameson, thank you. We'll handle this." But I wasn't done. Not yet. The board could fire him quietly, sweep everything under the rug. That wasn't enough. Richard needed to fall the way he made me fall, publicly. So I orchestrated one final act. At the next all-staff meeting, just as Richard launched into another smug speech, the chairman entered with 2 HR representatives. "Richard Hale," the chairman announced, his voice cold and authoritative, "you are hereby terminated for misconduct, fraud, and violation of company policy." Gasps filled the room. Richard's face turned crimson. "What? This is a mistake. I've built this department." But before he could finish, the chairman dropped the dossier onto the table with a heavy thud. "We have the evidence. You're finished." The room buzzed with whispers. Colleagues stared wide-eyed as Richard's empire crumbled before them. And then, the sweetest moment of all, David, his chosen protege, leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Guess you should have listened to Clara." Richard's smirk was gone. His swagger evaporated. Security escorted him out, his protest echoing down the hallway. I sat there, calm, collected, a small smile playing on my lips. The same office that had witnessed my humiliation now witnessed his downfall. The Monday after Richard's firing felt strange. The office looked the same, rows of cubicles, buzzing phones, the faint smell of burnt coffee, but the air was different. Lighter. Free. People moved differently, too. They smiled more, talked openly, no longer weighed down by the invisible cloud of his presence. Some stopped by my desk, whispering things like, "You did it, Clara." Others just gave me a nod of quiet respect. David, now officially in the assistant director role, approached me with a hesitant smile. "Clara, I know things were messy, but I want to do this right. I need your help." For the first time, I didn't feel resentment. Instead, I saw an opportunity to shape the culture I had long dreamed of, to turn our department into a place of collaboration instead of fear. And when I looked around the room, I realized something. Richard's reign of terror was over, not because someone swooped in to save us, but because I fought back. Personal reflection. That night, I walked home under the glow of Chicago's streetlights. The city felt alive, humming with possibility. For years, I had sacrificed everything. My time, my hobbies, my peace of mind, believing loyalty and hard work would protect me. But the truth? Loyalty means nothing to someone who only sees you as a stepping stone. Hard work, without boundaries, only feeds the machine of exploitation. What truly matters is courage. The courage to stand up, to say enough, to reclaim your dignity even when it feels impossible. Richard thought he could break me, but in trying to bury me, he handed me the shovel I needed to bury him instead. So here's what I learned and what I want you to take away. Triangular flag. If you're dealing with a toxic boss, remember, you are not powerless. Triangular flag. Document everything. Protect yourself with proof. Triangular flag. Find allies, even outside the office, who can guide you. Triangular flag. And never forget, silence only feeds the bully. Speaking up might be terrifying, but sometimes it's the only way to change the story. Because at the end of the day, the workplace should not be a battlefield where dignity is sacrificed for a paycheck. It should be a place where hard work is valued, where respect is mutual, and where no one should have the power to destroy your sense of worth. And now I want to hear from you. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever had a boss like Richard? Someone who tried to keep you down, to steal your shine? Backhand index pointing right. If you were in my shoes, what would your revenge have looked like? Share your story in the comments below. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking back your power. It's inspiring others to take back theirs too. This was my office revenge story. If you want more stories like this, true, raw, and unapologetically real, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, there are more battles, more lessons, and more victories waiting to be told.